6 books make up the shortlist for the Financial Times Goldman Sachs Business Book of the Year Award 2011. Poor Economics by Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo. Written by the founders of MIT's Poverty Action Laboratory, Poor Economics is a transformative reappraisal of the world of the extreme poor. While billions of government dollars and thousands of organizations are dedicated to helping the world's poor, much of the work they do is based on assumptions that are untested generalizations at best and harmful misperceptions at worst. Working in dozens of countries over 15 years, Banerjee and Duflo have identified in Poor Economics wholly new aspects of the behavior of poor people, their needs, and the way that aid or financial investment can affect their lives, offering all of us an opportunity to think of a world beyond poverty.
Poor Economics is actually an incredibly rich book on the economics of poverty. Ever since Adam Smith, much effort was put into understanding the wealth of nations, much less into understanding the poverty of individuals. This book is highly radical and entirely practical. Radical because it changes the basics of the economics of poverty. Highly practical because it comes with a number of suggestions on how to improve anti-poverty policies to make them more effective. In a sense, it is the experiments conducted with the poor themselves, talking with them, that bring about these results on how to improve the anti-poverty policies. And this is passionate reading because the topic is potentially desperate, but one concludes the reading of this book with a lot of hope.
Exorbitant Privilege by Barry Eichengreen. For more than half a century, the dollar has been not just America's currency, but the world's. This was a source of strength for the United States. But now, with US budget deficits growing, holding dollars is viewed as a losing proposition. In Exorbitant Privilege, Barry Eichengreen traces the rise of the dollar to its domination of the global economy. With the rise of China, India, Brazil, and other emerging economies, America no longer towers over the global economy. Incisive and challenging, Exorbitant Privilege is a fascinating analysis of the changes that lie ahead, and a challenge equally to those who warn that the dollar is doomed or regard its continuing dominance as inevitable.
Exorbitant Privilege is a very enjoyable canter down the economic history of the US dollar, and a fair warning not to underestimate the role of the US dollar in the global economy and not to overestimate the future role of an untradable and non-trading renminbi. It doesn't really focus on the current Eurozone crisis, but it does have a very telling point that it is self-destructive politics that will accelerate the decline of the dollar, if anything.
Triumph of the City by Edward Glaser. Pioneering urban economist Edward Glaser offers a fascinating, even inspiring proof that the city is humanity's greatest invention and our best hope for the future. He sets out to prove that cities are actually the healthiest, greenest, and culturally richest places to live. Glaser travels through history and around the globe to reveal the hidden workings of cities and how they bring out the best in humankind. Using intrepid reportage, keen analysis, and eloquent argument, he makes an impassioned case for the city. With Triumph of the City, Glaser reminds us forcefully why we should love and nurture our cities, or suffer consequences that will hurt us all, no matter where we live.
Triumph of the Cities identifies them as the engine of innovation from time immemorial. This is because they attract human capital and then create the climate for greater creativity and productivity as these people collide together and work together in close proximity. Some cities have remained very productive for a long period of time. London, Tokyo, New York, reinventing themselves. What makes that happen? Other cities like Detroit have floundered. What makes that happen? What are the lessons from both these cases? Another interesting factor from the book, cities are environmentally friendly. You have a much lower carbon footprint if you live on the 25th floor of a high-rise building in Manhattan as compared to a huge garden suburban house with trees in front of you. This is a very timely book. It's got huge lessons As 100+ million people move from rural environments into cities in emerging markets, they can all learn from it.
Willful Blindness by Margaret Heffernan. In this timely book, Margaret Heffernan makes the convincing case that while we are supposedly better informed than ever, we are guilty of frequent and self-destructive acts of willful blindness. Children are educated to be docile capitalists rather than argumentative citizens, and companies are so terrified of the truth that they delude themselves with risk models that end up killing them. Ranging through history, business, science, government and the family, Heffernan's engaging book explains why willful blindness is so dangerous in our interconnected world, before suggesting ways institutions and individuals can start to combat it.
As a former regulator, I've seen human malevolence that very few people in this world has ever seen. And Willful Blindness is a book that really points out why people go wrong, what characteristics they have which make them take that turn to the left, which could be catastrophic. And if any one of the books that I've read for this contest I had to select for my two children who are going into business, it would be Willful Blindness, because it points out the irrationality of the decision-making process and the importance, most critically, of going against conventional thinking. It is a compelling, well-written, fascinating story of what business life is and what twists and turns individuals can avoid by being mindful of their own frailty, being mindful of their own prejudices, and being able to stand up to so-called conventional thinking.
Good Strategy, Bad Strategy by Richard Rummelt. Using compelling examples and penetrating insights, Richard Rummelt explores new and powerful ways leaders can tackle obstacles. He explains what is and what is not good strategy and good strategic thinking, and what actions organizations should embrace as well as avoid, using examples from world and corporate history, from Hannibal and Operation Desert Storm to IBM and Apple. In Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, Rummelt does not offer simplistic formulas for success. Instead, he explains the logic of good strategy and the sources of power that talented strategists have tapped, highlighting the pitfalls and fallacies one must avoid.
You know, every business person, every CEO needs to know what makes a strategy good. And in Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, Richard Rummelt really shows the power of insight. Insight about your customers, insight about your markets, insight about what you can do. It's a fantastic book, and I'd recommend it to anybody who wants to build good strategy.
The Quest by Daniel Yergin. In this long-awaited successor to his Pulitzer-winning The Prize, Daniel Yergin provides an essential narrative of global energy, the principal engine of geopolitical and economic change, and central to the battle over climate change. From the jammed streets of Beijing, the shores of the Caspian Sea and the conflicts in the Middle East, to Capitol Hill and Silicon Valley, Yergin takes us inside the decisions and choices that are shaping our future. The Quest presents an extraordinary range of characters and a panorama of dramatic stories that illustrate the principles that will shape a robust and flexible energy security system for the decades to come.
Daniel Yergin is one of the great narrative writers of our time in the business community. And in his book, The Quest, he certainly does not disappoint the reader. This is a very coherent expose of the key issues in the area of energy. What he does is not only does he write about the last 20 years on what happened and how we have come to this particular point of time, but also he draws up the key pointers for us for the next 20 years or so, and does it in a very compelling way.